The next indicator focuses on the entity's nature of ownership. The purpose of this indicator is to describe the ownership status and characteristics of the participating entity. It is very important to provide the correct nature of ownership because this status is used by GRESB to define peer groups and to share results. Data collected through the asset assessment is only disclosed to the participants themselves and in the case of non-listed infrastructure assets, to GRESB fund manager members that link to the asset and GRESB investor members that request access to the asset in the portal. In both of these cases, the participant decides whether to accept or deny these requests. And in the case of listed infrastructure companies, to all GRESB investor members that invest in listed infrastructure securities. If the entity is public, then you'll be required to provide an International Securities Identification Number, or ISIN. For the next indicator, state the year when the entity first commenced or is expected to commence operation. If the reporting entity represents a portfolio of facilities being assessed as one asset, i.e. a multi-facility asset, then it should be when the first facility in the portfolio commenced operation. If the entity is still under construction, sometimes known as greenfield asset, then enter the expected year when operations will commence. If the entity is both in construction and operational, then enter the year when the first part of the project commenced operation. Setting and describing appropriate boundaries for reporting on ESG is critical to allow A. Data to be collected and reported consistently for an entity, B. Trends over time for an entity to be accurately observed, and C. Objective comparisons to be made between entities. GRESB intends to work with the industry to give more focus on performance measurement and scoring over the next few years. To cater for this, as well as to ensure that reporting uses accurate boundaries, the scope of reporting will need to become more standardized across entities to ensure that apples-to-apples comparisons can be made. To this end, the asset assessment includes indicators that help to accurately describe the boundaries of reporting for each entity. These indicators are: first, EC4 reporting year. This describes the temporal boundary for reporting. Second, RC3 sector and geography. This includes the list of asset facilities with their geolocation, thus describing the physical boundary for reporting. And third, RC4 ancillary activities. This includes the list of ancillary activities undertaken by the entity, thus describing the operational boundary for reporting. The combination of these indicators provides an accurate picture of the reporting boundary. Everything within the boundary should be reported on within the relevant indicators, and everything outside the boundary should not be included. This reporting boundary data will be carefully analyzed and used in future years to standardize the reporting boundaries for all entities within similar sectors, thereby enabling fair and equitable data comparisons and scoring. This indicator simply sets the entity's annual reporting year. If reporting uses calendar year, select that option. If reporting uses a different year, fiscal or financial, then select that option and specify the starting month. You must use the most recently closed reporting year. All responses in the assessment must refer to the selected reporting year. See the table for details. Reporting characteristics describe the entity, define the reporting scope for the current reporting year, and determine the structure of the assessment submission. The reporting currency is stated in indicator RC1 and must be used consistently throughout the assessment. In RC2, participants specify the entity's economic size in terms of gross asset value, revenue, and number of full-time equivalent employees, as well as that for contractors. In indicator RC2, the monetary values must be completed in millions. The gross asset value should reflect the tangible fixed assets or property, plant, and equipment associated with the infrastructure asset. The revenue should be the annual income generated by the entity in exchange for providing the asset service. Like all information provided to GRESB, this information will be kept confidential, visible only to you and any investors to which you give permission. These data points are used as denominators to calculate intensity performance metrics, which are comparable between assets. The indicator on sector and geography requires that participants list and describe the asset's facilities. This information is used for peer grouping, materiality-based scoring, and boundary reporting. It is up to participants to determine the best structure for reporting of facilities since they have the best understanding of them. Assign a relative weight for each facility based on the actual or estimated proportion it comprises of the total asset GAV. The sum of all of the facility weights must total 100%. Type the address of the facility and suggestions will appear in a drop-down for selection. Latitude and longitude coordinates will be automatically filled in if the address is valid. If there is no clear address, then provide the latitude and longitude coordinates. It is very important to select the correct facility sector by clicking on the drop-down list or by typing in a keyword. Only list the facility's core sector, its main infrastructure service. If there is more than one core sector for the facility, then consider splitting it up into multiple facilities within one core sector per facility. The full list of sectors aligns with the EDHEC Infra TICS standard industrial classifications. Facility information is aggregated to define a primary sector and primary location for the asset and is shown below the facility table. The primary sector is determined based on the mix of facility sectors using a three-tier system as follows. First is by subclass. If 75% or more of the facilities belong to a single subclass, then the primary sector will be that subclass. Otherwise, move to the class level. If 75% or more of the facilities belong to a single class, then the primary sector will be that class. Otherwise, move to the superclass level. If 75% or more of the facilities belong to a single superclass, then the primary sector will be that superclass. Otherwise, the primary sector is diversified. Similarly, the primary location is determined based on the mix of facility locations, using a three-tier system as follows. First, country. If 59% or more of the facilities are located in a single country, then the primary location is that country. Otherwise, move to the subregion level. If 59% or more of the facilities are located in a single subregion, then the primary location is that subregion. Otherwise, move to the region level. If 59% or more of the facilities are located in a single region, then the primary location is that region. Otherwise, the location is globally diversified. The example on this slide demonstrates the process. In this case, the two facilities are not of the same subclass or class, but more than 75% is of the same sector at the superclass level. So the primary sector assigned is renewable power. Similarly, the facilities are not located in the same country, but more than 59% are in the same region. So the primary location assigned is Europe. Let's take a look at how peer groups are set for benchmarking purposes. Each participant is assigned to a peer group based on the entity's primary sector, primary location, and other factors. To ensure participant anonymity, GRESB will only create a peer group if there is a minimum of 6 participants allocated to the peer group, the participant plus 5 other peers. Peer group assignments do not affect an entity's score, but determine how GRESB puts participants' results into context. The goal of the peer group creation process is to compare participants who share important characteristics, while A, maintaining a minimum threshold of 6, and B, having less than 50% of the participants in the group from the same company. This table explains how peer group allocation works. We first look at the most granular level of the sector, which is subclass. If there are 6 participants in this subclass, then we check whether there are enough participants within the same country to create a peer group. If not, then we look at if there are enough participants at the sub-region level and so forth. If there are less than 6 participants in the subclass level, then we go through the same process at the class level, etc. The next indicator requires that ancillary activities engaged in by the entity be selected, and for the participant to indicate whether these activities are included within the reporting boundary. Ancillary activities are those activities engaged in by the entity that assist in providing its core service, but which are not its main activity. This information is used in combination with the facilities and reporting year descriptions to describe the entity's reporting boundary. Exceptions to the described reporting boundary must be described in the performance component indicators. A clear understanding of reporting boundaries will provide for their standardization in the future and thereby facilitate accuracy in like-for-like comparisons. Select all significant activities engaged in by the entity outside of its main activity. Insignificant activities typically make up less than 1% of the entity's budget, resourcing, or revenue, so excluding them from the ESG reporting still provides a complete picture to stakeholders. Select all of the ancillary activities that are included within the boundary of ESG reporting of the entity. This must be a subset or all of the activities listed in the previous section. In other words, only select from the activities that were selected in the previous list. Select the nature of the participating entity and relevant sub-options as follows. First, select whether the entity structure is corporate, a special purpose vehicle, or some other structure. If this is the case, then please describe. Next, select the most significant business risks or revenue basis borne by the entity out of the options merchant, concessionary or contracted, regular or other. This aligns with the EdHec Infra TICS classification for business risk. Multiple answers are possible. Last, select whether the entity provides associated services in addition to providing the asset itself. The associated services may be asset maintenance and/or asset operation. This determines whether the scope of service provided by the entity is asset provision and maintenance, asset provision and operation, or asset provision, maintenance, and operation. This information is used for materiality-based scoring and to determine peers for benchmarking and reporting purposes. In RC6, you are asked to provide a description of the asset. This may include such details as purpose of the entity's operations, service or services provided by the asset, ownership and governance, market position of the entity, and a link to its website. The entity can also upload an image of the asset and its company logo, which are used for marketing purposes such as Sector Leader Award attributions. Infrastructure is a diverse asset class, where the relevance or materiality of ESG issues can vary between assets due to a range of factors. The GRESB materiality assessment uses a series of factors and questions specific to the entity to determine the materiality of ESG issues based on the answers provided. Completing this indicator determines the materiality or level of relevance for each of the ESG issues used in materiality-based scoring. This process applies the well-proven process of materiality assessment to scoring, thus ensuring that all assets are assessed and scored based on the ESG issues that are most material to their circumstances. This diagram explains the process, but we won't go into detail here as there is a specific lesson focusing on this. It is important to understand that completing this indicator accurately, along with RC2, RC3, and RC5, ensures that the assessment is tailored accurately to the entity's particular context and has a direct impact on how indicators in both the management and performance components are scored. There is guidance on answering each question in the reference guide and in the portal. Also see the dedicated lesson on asset assessment, GRESB materiality-based scoring. The outcome of completing this indicator is an entity-specific materiality weighting for each of the ESG issues. These weightings are displayed at the bottom of the indicator in the portal. Thank you for taking the time to complete this lesson. We hope that it helped you understand the structure of the infrastructure asset assessment and how to complete the entity and reporting characteristics. For any questions, you can contact us at gresb.com/contact.